Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to the Attic. It's time for another voicemail. Today's voicemail is from an anonymous caller. Let's listen to what they have to say.
Hey Lloyd, I really like your channel. I've watched most of your videos and comment frequently in the comment section. I too, like you, are an XJW and quite the apostate. And I'm calling and leaving this message, and I give you absolute authority to use this message for a video. In fact, I encourage you and want you to make a video about this because at the end, I'm going to ask you a question that I would very much like to know your thoughts on. So recently, my aunt passed away, and I have been invited to the memorial service. Now, 27 years ago, when my own mother passed, I went to her service, and I know how this organization works. And it starts out as a memorial and a celebration of the person's life, and then ultimately winds up just being a sales pitch for how great the religion is and why aren't you coming back to the Kingdom Hall. My mother's people, or her side of the family, are all still JWs. And two of my sisters are. Through a cousin, now I've been estranged from that side of the family for almost a decade now. Through my cousin, he's invited me. He's going to go. He's not really in the religion anymore, but he's going to go. And he's invited me to the service. 27 years ago, at my mom's memorial, I walked out of that building and I promised myself that I would never walk inside of a Kingdom Hall ever again for as long as I live. I'm 46 now, and I've kept that promise, and I don't intend to break it. So my decision has already been made on this matter. This is something that all XJWs will face if you live long enough. I'm in the fall of my life. Many of my relatives are now in the winter of their life, and they're going to start dying. My aunt was the first of them. So, and this is going to happen to you too, as well. Now, I've made my decision. I'm not going. I will honor my aunt's memory in the customs of my beliefs. By the way, I am a gay practicing Wiccan. They know, most of them know about the gay part. A lot of them don't know about the Wiccan part. But I will honor the memory of my ancestors, and I actually often do, in the natural world. I don't view death the way other people do. I'm not scared of it. It's as natural to die as it is to live. But I know how these events go, and I just have really nothing to say to these people anymore. But Lloyd, really, this call is about you, because I'd like to know, what are you going to do? One day, all of us, including you, are going to face this decision. What are your plans when it's one of your relatives, or the day when it is your parent or parents? Have you thought about this? What are your choices? Will you even be invited? Would you go? Or would you, like me, celebrate the life cycle of this person and loved one in your own private ceremony? Again, I give you full permission to use this call. I look forward to seeing this on your channel.
Thank you so much for that really interesting voicemail / question. Wow, okay. So I guess there's only one relative, Jehovah's Witness relative, that I'm comfortable talking about in the context of would I go to their funeral or not, and that's my dad. I mean, I don't have to think about going to my mum's funeral because she died many years ago. So there's really just my dad's funeral that sort of applies to your question and that I'd be comfortable talking about. And I go backwards and forwards a little bit on what I would do. I don't think it's going to be for maybe the next 10 years or so. Trying to think how old my dad is. He's in my life so little that I don't even think about it, to be honest. But yeah, I guess he won't have that much time left. I think the way I feel right now, and who knows, maybe my attitude will change, but the way I feel right now is that I probably wouldn't go to the funeral. And in the scenario where he passes, it's not something I'm relishing. I don't think anyone should relish that sort of thing. I wish him a long, healthy life. But in my own personal case, I feel that the shunning has been so brutal and so severe that there isn't really any reason for me to go to the funeral, It would be hypocritical almost of me to go to the funeral. I guess I'd feel differently if I could have reasonable confidence that they were actually going to honor him as a person and honor his background and his roots and his heritage and his role as a father and all that kind of thing. But we all know that Jehovah's Witness funerals are basically just sales pitches, There's minimal, and I've been to enough Jehovah's Witness funerals to know that this is the case. It's basically just minimal information about them as a person and as much preaching and encouraging people to follow the example of this faithful brother or sister as you could possibly imagine. It's not a true funeral. If anything, it's kind of the opposite of a funeral. It's almost like a disservice to the deceased, because if there's one time in history when you should get to be remembered, it's surely at your funeral. It's your funeral when really people should be talking about who you are as a person. And so when Jehovah's Witnesses outright refuse to do that and instead hijack the opportunity as a chance to promote the organization, what they're doing is almost desecrating the memory of the deceased. They're dishonoring it. So that would be one main reason why I wouldn't want to go to my dad's funeral. I also feel as though it would be a traumatic experience to not so much go to a Kingdom Hall. I don't have a problem going to Kingdom Halls, to be honest. I try to go to them, in fact, not at every opportunity, but on a fairly regular basis, at least maybe once a year or something, just so I can kind of understand what it means to be a Jehovah's Witness now. Because let's face it, this religion is changing all the time. And meetings now in 2023 are not the same as meetings in 2010, 2011 when I was exiting. They've changed. And it's useful for me to every now and then sit through an entire meeting, not with a notebook necessarily, but just kind of taking mental notes about what a current meeting looks and feels and sounds like. And I did that sort of recently, thumbnail here if Tibor is gracious. So I don't have a problem going to a Kingdom Hall as you do, although I fully respect the reasons why you can't go to a Kingdom Hall and sympathize with them. It's more the trauma of going back to the particular Kingdom Hall where I was raised, although it's since been kind of completely kind of bulldozed and rebuilt as like a modern Kingdom Hall. So it's not really recognizable to the Kingdom Hall I was attending, but it's still sort of a similar style in the architecture and that kind of thing. But even to just go to that location where my mum's funeral was, where I've attended so many weddings, where my mum and dad got married, it's that particular spot on the map has so much personal kind of weight for me in terms of my family history. And to go there and be surrounded by strangers who know my dad better than I know him, to be completely honest with you, because they're in his life week in, week out, and I'm not. And to have the whole shaming experience, oh, your dad, what are you doing, Lloyd? Your dad would be so ashamed of you. Even if they're not outright saying that, I know that's what they would be thinking. So why put myself through that traumatic ordeal just for the sake of ritual, I think what I probably would do is I would have a dialogue, or I would have conversations with surviving members of my family who I actually care about, and that's a very, very short list. That's a short list. I would have some conversations where I would say, look, I for my own mental health and well-being, I really, really do not want to go to Dad's funeral. But if it's really, really important for you, and if you need me to be there as a support to you, I'll consider it. I'd be willing to have that conversation. But if this very, very small list of surviving relatives of mine are like, Lloyd, you don't have to be there, I wouldn't be there. I just wouldn't. Because there'd be no point. That there'd be nothing about him as a person. It would just be a sales pitch. And I ceased to have a relationship with the guy 11 years ago, something like that. I don't know him. I don't know him. You go to the funerals of people that you actually know. So that's how I feel right now. Maybe I'll feel differently when the time comes. Maybe something's going to change. And again, hopefully he will live a long and healthy life and live well into his 90s, perhaps. I don't know. Hopefully it's not something I even need to think about for still quite a few years. But the way I feel right now, with greatest respect to him, in the unlikely event that he's watching, I probably wouldn't go to his funeral. That's the long-winded answer to your question, and I hope it's helpful for you. And I fully empathize with your own expressions about funerals. And yeah, it's disgraceful how they effectively dishonor the dead by taking the one time when we should be talking about their memory and using it to promote an organization. So that's about all I have to say. Don't forget that you can leave a message on the voicemails, or you might have your voicemail answered by going to speakpipe.com/Cedars, remembering to indicate clearly if you don't want me to cover your message on this channel. But that's all I have time for. Thank you so much for watching.